and start. So, hi everyone, I'm Connie Szabo-Schmucker, Advocacy Director at Bicycle Garage Indy, and I'm going to be joined by Anthony Cherolis, who is one of our mechanics at Bicycle Garage Indy, and also a new transplant from Connecticut. Is that right?
You got it.
Okay. I thought I had it right, and then I questioned myself. So, and he's new to Indianapolis and brings a wealth of knowledge of advocacy and just general knowledge on bicycling in general. So we're happy to have him in Indianapolis as part of the Bicycle Garage Indy family, as well as our presenter today. A couple of housekeeping things. Please remain muted until we get to some, until we get to Q&As. You can type any questions during the presentation into chat, and we'll cover those as well. And this program, Bicycling Lunch and Learn, is a program of the Cycle Commuter Task Force, which is Bike Indianapolis, Bicycle Garage Indy, Commuter Connect, and SEBA. So we will have monthly programs on the second Thursday of the month at noon via Zoom. And the recordings are posted on a couple of different websites, and we make them available on our social media as well. So you should hopefully be able to find them. If you want to look at it again later or want to share it with somebody. And let's see, trying to think if there's anything else. I think that's all I have as the basic introduction. So I'm going to turn this over to Tony and mute myself.
All right. Everyone can hear me all right? Connie, I'll give you the yes or no.
Yes.
All right. I got a thumbs up. Awesome. My name is Anthony Cherolis. I'm excited to be leading this Lunch and Learn. This is my first class webinar in Indianapolis. As Connie mentioned, I just moved here in December last year from Connecticut. I'm originally from the Midwest, so I kind of have the Midwest in my bones. I grew up in Southwest Ohio. I'm originally an engineer by career, but went into the nonprofit world and community bike shops and transportation advocacy while I was in Connecticut in 2015. And that's where my mechanic and technician and sales and retail got polished. Then I moved here to Indy. Didn't just move here. I did a 5-month bike tour. So I'm going to jump into introductions. If you see the chat or have the chat open, I mentioned that coming in. We'll start with introductions. I'm going to go with mine first, so you have some time to think of your introduction. We're going to keep it really brief and go through the folks that have joined us. If you don't want to give your introduction over video and audio, feel free to type it into the chat. That's a great way for us to figure out who's joining us and what their interests are. That helps me shape the seminar and the topics beyond what I've already put together. So my adventure last year was my midlife crisis / sabbatical. I rode for about 5 months, starting in Hartford in June of 2022, coming to the Midwest, looping around Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan, heading back to the East Coast via the Gap Trail and C&O Canal from Pittsburgh to DC. I rode the East Coast Greenway south from DC to Key West, Florida. My takeaway from that segment was that Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina are states you can skip on the East Coast Greenway. A lot of terrible state routes with no shoulders and high-speed traffic. Surprisingly, Georgia was nice. Florida had good bike lanes. And then from Key West, I followed the Gulf Shores up up and around the Panhandle to New Orleans. And from there, I took a train up to Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, the Spirit of New Orleans. Got myself a sleeper car, absolutely spoiled myself, and then hopped over on a 2-day ride with a winter camp out in mid-December to get back to Indianapolis. So my sister lives down the street from me here with a 2-year-old niece in the Broad Ripple neighborhood. As I mentioned, I grew up in Southwest Ohio between Cincinnati and Dayton. I haven't owned a car since 2010. I do rent them still. Easy to get to the Avis car rental from Broad Ripple. And I'm a league cycling instructor in addition to being a mechanic. So that's my very quick intro. And I'm going to ask Connie to call on folks to unmute and just share your name, the city or town, or if you're in Indy, what neighborhood you're joining us from, and what type of riding you do. And just keep it short, and then we'll get into the meat of the presentation.
So we have a couple of folks that have put it in the chat. So George is from Greenwood, just exploring and getting into bicycling. Tess is with Bike Indianapolis, Northeast Indy, recreational riding. Kara lives on the south side near Beech Grove, rides for leisure, paved paths, and mostly getting her partner into riding. Krista, Indianapolis, pleasure riding, commute to work, trail riding.
Mm-hmm.
And Ms. Shelton is from Indy, enjoys riding on the Monon Trail and a leisure rider. Pam Majors from Brownsburg, ride for leisure and triathlons. Phil, Northeast Side, mountain bike and touring. Mira from Fort Wayne, used to do much riding around the world, recently moved to Indiana, wanting to get started again, mostly 30 to 50 miles, casual, moderate pace. Ron, Indianapolis Monon trail rider. I think that's everybody so far that has put in. Bill and Joanne from Fishers, leisure riding, just getting started. Julia Carmel, daily commuter. Anna lives in Carmel, used to commute in and downtown for work, but now having issues with timing and childcare, would like to get back into it. Just bike for leisure on weekends right now. And I guess I'll tell folks a little bit about me. I've been biking forever. I mostly bike for recreation, leisure, I bike to take photographs, go on photo bike rides. I do bike commuting as well. I'm a league cycling instructor as well. And some of the stuff I do also is pre-pandemic, I led about 40 rides a year, hoping to get back into that sometime in the near future. And I also teach kids and adults how to ride bikes as part of my, and a lot of them, I get the hard cases because if it was easy for them to learn how to ride a bike, they wouldn't be looking for somebody to teach them. So that's, but I'm very involved with, my position at Garage Indy is advocacy director. So I'm very involved with the advocacy world, bicycle advocacy world in Indianapolis and Indiana and nationally. So.
Awesome. Did we miss anybody on introductions? Just type in chat or unmute yourself and say hello. And I just didn't want to miss anybody before I started on to the next section. All right. Not hearing anything. So it sounds like we've got our intros in place. And I love seeing all the different types of riders it seems that we've had join us today. Fortunately, most of what we're talking about is very universal. So this is not a specific topic. So it's very easy to apply what we're talking about today from basic maintenance and safety standpoint, and also locking and bicycle security standpoint to all riders. I saw some Monon trail riders. That's my 6-mile commute on most days to the downtown BGI location is on the Monon. I'm really enjoying the new pavement on that wider section that finally got finished. And I can't wait until the interstate work is done and that connection is cleaned up along with Lewis Street, which connects over to BGI just half mile off the Monon. So we're going to start with the very basic ABC quick check. And I talk about this as a safety item because maintenance is so much of safety. And your pre-ride check of your equipment is extremely important to your safety on that ride, for controlling the bike, for being able to stop the bike, for being able to get going, out of a stop sign or stoplight, for not having something come loose or fall off mid-ride. Most importantly, your wheels. So maintenance is safety, and it's the baseline for your ride. The interesting statistic that one has, if Connie's taught leak cycling courses, is around half of crashes are the bicycle rider with themselves. It's just them, not hitting a vehicle, not running into a pedestrian, not colliding with another bicycle rider. It's the bicyclist themselves. And a lot of those crashes are related to brakes not working, an unexpected flat tire, something falling off the bike and getting into the spokes, those sort of maintenance related items that can be avoided with a good pre-ride check. So the mnemonic, the acronym that we like to use is the ABC quick check. And then when I teach this to youth, I make them say every time you ride. So I say ABC quick check, and then I get the room to call back to me every time you ride. And it's a fun way for them to remember what to do. So from teaching folks that aren't youth, we get to think about it in a little more analytical way. So air, pressure in your tires. B, that your brakes are functioning. C, that's your drivetrain, chain cassette and chain rings. Quick is your quick release on wheels, and also for bikes have different ways of attaching their wheels. The bolt-on wheels or the through axle, making sure that those are snug. And check is just your final check, spin around the parking lot before you leave. So I'm going to dive into each one of these with a little bit more information. If you have any questions or good stories, put them into the chat, and we'll catch them as we go. So this one comes up a lot more often in the shop than one might expect. I think it's not intuitive how quickly tires lose pressure just from the seeping of small air particles through the rubber membrane. But in addition to pinching your tire, just doing the thumb check, making sure the pressure feels appropriate, one needs to pump up their tires and add a little bit of pressure at least weekly. If you pump the tire up the night before and it's soft the next morning, you've got a leak. If you pump the tire up and it's a little soft a month later, that might not be a leak. It's probably just your tire losing a couple of PSI per week, pounds of pressure per week, just from the air seeping through the small gaps in the rubber. So if you're riding a bike regularly, you should have a bike pump with a pressure gauge. Most bike pumps sold at bike shops have a pressure gauge right on them. You pump it up to the pressure within the range that is marked on the side of your tire. The lower pressure is going to allow you a slightly cushier ride. The higher pressure in that range is the maximum, and that's going to be a harder tire, a little bumpier ride, but can be faster on smooth roads. So just make sure you don't go over the max pressure. If it's a single pressure marked on the tire, you can go straight to it and that'll be your target. Most pumps have a little arrow on that gauge, so you can see it from far away when you get to that pressure. If you're using an air compressor at home or a gas station inflator, be careful. They put a lot of air in the tire at once. They can blow the bead off the rim, or they can overpressure the tire and cause the tire to fail. So we use an inflator or compressor at the shop, but we've got the maximum pressure limited so that we don't overpressure the tires. If you're using a bike pump at home, that's your best option. If you're using a compressor, be careful, and you can even set that maximum pressure on a lot of compressors. So any questions on tire inflation before we step on to the next one?
Oh, good info, thank you.
And if you have any questions, there's two types of tire valves: a Presta, which is your skinny one, more often on high performance bikes and road bikes. And then there's the Schrader valve, which looks like a normal car valve. Any bike pump you buy at a shop usually has capability to be used with both of those valves. Some of the mini pumps that you might buy, you'll have to flip-flop some bits to make it work with the different types of valves. If you want someone to show you how to do it, stop by a bike shop, and it's going to take a minute, and they'll show you what to do, both how to use a pump and how to check the pressure. So, all right. Moving on from air, we're going to go to brakes. These are all very quick checks. You can do your ABC quick check, in less than a minute once you're used to doing it. So the first thing to do is squeeze your brakes. If the brake levers bottom out on your handlebar, your brakes need adjustment. Either the cable is loose, or the cable is broken, or your pads are worn out. But that is an indicator that your brakes aren't going to do their job while you're riding. As soon as those brake levers hit the bar, you don't have any more stopping power. That's the limit to your stopping power. You should, like the image on the right, have about a finger or thumb's distance between the brake lever and the bar when you squeeze that brake lever with a reasonable amount of force. Secondary check here is just while you're grabbing the brakes, try to roll the bike forward. The wheels shouldn't rotate. The brakes should be doing their job. If your brake pads are slipping on the rim surface, or you hear a terrible noise, that's time to get it checked out. So that is your brakes. Any question on brakes? All right. Brake pads are kind of a seasonal replacement. If you're riding heavily during the season, you're probably going to go through at least a pair of brake pads a season. So it's going to be part of your annual tune-up. If you're not putting in a ton of miles, it might be every 2 or 3 years, but it is a maintenance item. Okay. Chain rings. This is another one that comes into our shop, and more commonly than one would expect. People will come in and the chain will be entirely like bone dry. And when the chain is dry, it's going to be moving, it gets stiff, it's going to be noisy, the shifting is going to be terrible. And the first thing to do during your chain part of the ABC quick check is look at your chain. Is the chain lubricated? There are different types of lubrication, waxy dry lubes, oil-based wet lubes. They have different benefits and detriments. Most common recreational riders are going to use a simple wet lube. There's going to be several options at your bike shop. The first thing to do is check, is the chain lubricated? If it's not, you just drip pedal lube or drip the chain lube down the center of the chain where the pins are, and spin it backwards while you're dripping chain lube. Spin it once or twice while dripping. Spin it a few more times to work it in, and then wipe off excess with a rag. It's very straightforward. If that's more than you want to do, stop by your local bike shop, after on one of your commutes or rides, and it's a really quick maintenance item at a shop. The first thing to do if your chain is noisy or skipping is see if it's lubricated. If that doesn't help, your shifting might need adjustment. Your chain may be worn out, and it's time to take it to the shop and have maintenance done. If you've got a new bike and you didn't do your first tune-up, so within 1 to 6 months, depending on how much you're riding the new bike, it's recommended you bring the bike in for its first tune-up, which is just a basic adjustment of cable tension. And whenever the shop puts it up on the stand, they're going to check and lube your chain at the same time and adjust your shifting. So if you didn't do your new bike tune-up, get in there for that. That might take care of your chain issues. Any question on drivetrain? Good one from, we've got a question in the chat. What's a common chain life before replacing? It depends. Under extremely heavy use and gritty riding, an e-bike may have a chain life of 500 to 600 miles. That's under a lot more power than a person pedaling without e-assist is going to have. And your cleanliness of the riding conditions is going to make a big difference, because that dust and grit gets into the chain and causes it to wear more quickly. So it could be as low as 500 to 600 miles. It could be 2,000 miles plus, with a well-maintained clean chain. So it depends. The rule of thumb, if you're riding daily, is you're gonna go through 1 or 2 chains in a season. If you're riding intermittently, a few times a month, it may be a few years before you replace a chain. So, but depends on the conditions of the riding. And if it's an e-bike, it's going to be especially quick, just because of the increased power.
I'll jump in and mention also, if you don't replace your chain quickly, then you could have more maintenance issues with your cog set.
Yeah, if your chain gets worn beyond a certain point, the new chain won't work with your cassette in the back and your chain rings in the front. So when a chain gets past a certain point and we recommend replacement, we also have to recommend replacement for those additional drivetrain parts, so that the chain and the chain rings all work together. If you just replace the chain that has been severely worn and leave the worn chain rings, it'll skip terribly if you put pressure on it. The newer, narrower chains, some of them are on the shorter side of that life cycle. So if you're riding an older 5-speed, 1 in the front, 5 in the back, or an older 10-speed 2x5, those chains seem to last forever, and the chain rings were beefy and steel. So with the improved shifting that we get with modern chains and drivetrains, we have a little less durability. So I saw the mountain bike is 20 years old and never replaced the chain. So I wanted to give that one. So if the chain was replaced on that mountain bike, when that chain breaks or stops functioning well, you're definitely going to have to replace the cassette and the chain rings in the front at the same time. All right. Quick release. A lot of times folks will take off their front wheel in order to get a bike in the car or in the back of a van or SUV. The important thing is to make sure that when you put that wheel back on, that you've reconnected the brakes, if that's something you needed to do to take it off, and that you have closed the quick release or properly tightened down the wheel nuts or the through axle. So a lot of bikes have a quick release skewer that attaches the front and possibly the rear wheel. That is in place because it makes it a tool-free action to unclamp it, slightly unscrew it, and remove the wheel for transport or for tire changes. The thing you need to make sure you do when you put it back on is that you snugly close the quick release lever. They're going to have open and closed written on the sides of the lever. If you see open facing outward, that is dangerous. The quick release does not crank down like a bolt. It's a cam lock. The final clamp that holds the skewer snug is that closing action. So if you're not sure how to take off and put back on a front wheel and make sure that your quick release skewer is attached properly and closed, ask for a tutorial at your bike shop. We give these usually with every sale, unless the person says, oh yeah, I've done that a million times. So that's a quick tutorial at the bike shop. For bolt-on or through axles, that is a torque type attachment. So you just want to make sure that you have snugged those down. For through axles, they usually have a torque recommendation stamped onto the through axle. If you don't have a torque wrench or a calibrated forearm, you can ask for help on that in the bike shop, and they can give you advice on what is the appropriate tightness for that fastener. All right. And I saw a drivetrain question. Yeah. The quick release, that's a good point, is especially if the quick release may have been a little loose or not as tight as it should have been, it can come loose over time. So that's why it's part of the ABC quick check, is kind of bump that quick release lever every time before you ride, just to make sure that it is snugly closed. If you're riding on trails, occasionally a stick can pop up. The direction that you close the quick release lever, usually pointing up or back, keeps you from catching a stick that could potentially open up that lever. Don't close your lever facing forward if you're mountain biking, for sure. All right. Yep. Make sure to rehook your brakes if you took your front wheel off. If you didn't, you're going to find that out when you do your ABC quick check. When you grab your brake levers, if you forgot to reattach your brake cable after you put your wheel on, you're going to find it right then. I was funny story. When I was in college, my roommate thought it was going to be hilarious to detach both my front and rear brakes while my bike was locked at the rack down at Florida State. And he didn't get me because I grabbed my brake levers before I started, unlocked the bike, and before I took off, I grabbed the brake levers. They went all the way down to the handlebars, and I went, what? I saw they were detached. I knew immediately it must have been my roommate trying to be funny. So I reattached them, went around with my day. Didn't talk to my roommate about it, and just kind of kept it in the back of my head. So 3 weeks later, being young and irresponsible, I saw my roommate's bike locked out at a rack, and he was in class, and I detached his brakes. Fair play. And he did not do an ABC quick check, hopped onto the bike and ran into a crowd of people. So ABC Quick Check is helpful for tampering as well, or if you have a friend that is a jerk. So don't forget ABC Quick Check. The check part of the ABC Quick Check is our last step. At the bike shop, this is like the test ride where we spin it around the parking lot before you come and pick it up. We've done the work. We're just making sure everything is on point before we hand the bike back to a customer. But this is your test ride. Before you hop on the bike and ride onto the Monon Trail, before you hop on the bike and ride into city traffic, or try to cross at an intersection, ride around the parking lot, take a loop in the driveway or up and back on the sidewalk, riding, grab your brakes, shift your gears. Does anything sound loose? Bounce the bike. This is if you're transporting, groceries or something on your rack, this is the point to figure out by shaking the bike, is everything secure? So that is the final check on the ABC Quick Check. And the important thing is that you do it every time you ride. Not every other time. This is super quick every time you ride. Does anyone have any questions on ABC Quick Check before I dive into the next section, which is security and locking? If you have a question or even a good story, drop it in the comments here. All right. And my other quick question for comments was, is that helpful? Is that a helpful way to remember what your pre-ride check is? Is there something I should add to the next time that I teach this? All right, locking and security. My question as I'm getting started here is, who's had a bicycle stolen? Has anybody had a bicycle stolen? And put your answer in the chat. My response to that is yes. It's been a long time. I forgot to bring my lock to the rec center at Florida State. I tucked the bike in behind some other bikes. I took the chain off the chain rings. I could see the bike where I was lap swimming. And I thought, nobody's going to take my bike. I'll just keep an eye on it. Totally doesn't work. The bike was gone as soon as I came back, and I knew I'd done it to myself. I had a good U-lock. I just had left it at home, and to save a minute, I thought I could get away with watching the bike out the window while I swam laps, and that didn't work on a college campus for sure. So how you lock and what type of locks you use really matters. The reason it matters is because some locks are significantly easy to defeat. So the cable locks, like the one shown on the left, are flexible. They can get around a lot of things. They're easier to carry, but they're super easy to snip. So basic hardware store tools, easy to fit in a pocket, will cut a cable lock in seconds. They're an all right secondary lock or a lock on a bike that you have your eyes on, like while you're drinking a coffee and it's right there in front of you. But it's not a lock that you would ever want to use if you're leaving the bike for a period of time and it's out of your sight. The locks that we recommend are hardened steel U-locks and hardened steel chain locks, like the ones that are shown on the right. Those used in combination or with a U-lock plus a cable lock for accessories or to protect front wheel. That's the combination we often recommend to folks. And different cities have different levels of how much do you need to lock up a bike. The Indianapolis, I think, is pretty similar bike theft wise and bike theft savvy to Hartford, where I spent a lot of the last 20 years. And, you know, those cable locks, everybody knows if they're a bike thief, how to cut them. They're not as well versed in how to cut those strengthened U-locks and chains. If you're in New York City, a professional bike thief has the tools to even to cut those U-locks and chains. At that point, your strategy for where you lock up is extremely important and how long you lock up. So other considerations when you're locking your bike, similar to right now today, I pulled up at the Central Library downtown where I'm sitting right now in a study room, and there was a convenient bike rack. I locked up there. There was a sign on the fence that said, "Don't lock the fence. Your bike will be cut off. Your lock will be cut." So there are often places you shouldn't lock. Sometimes there are signs on those things that tell you not to lock there. Do pay attention. Those facilities folks will have an angle grinder, and they can and will cut your lock. And then you'll have to figure out where they're keeping your bike and hopefully not have to pay a fine. So don't block exits, don't lock to wheelchair ramps or block sidewalks. Choose well where you lock up. Is it visible? Is it secure? Is it well lighted? Take accessories with you. Clip off your lights. Flip off your lights. I brought mine in here to the library for sure. I want to have my lights for the ride home tonight. Take those with you. Unless you're at the coffee shop and you got eyes on your bike. If you're going inside for an hour, pull your lights off. If you've got a tool bag hanging under the seat, those are very useful things for folks. If it's easy to take off, it's easy to steal. My last point here is if there's nowhere to lock up, this is an opportunity for you to do some light advocacy, right? You can ask why. Ask the business owner, you know, ask the restaurant, ask the person at the front desk, where's the bike rack? Is there a reason why, you know, I had to go lock to a fence? Or is there another place that's better to park my bike? Or you really should have a bike rack here. This is a popular location. And I put the link down there in the bottom. If you want to recommend bike parking locations in Indy, there's a form where you can do that. There's also, I think, in Google Maps, Connie can chime in or drop the link into the chat, a way to find on Google Maps bike parking racks in Indy. All right, my favorite ways to lock up. If you just have a U-lock, putting it through the rear wheel within that rear triangle and around a secure rack or signpost. So you see how the rear wheel and the frame are protected. So that lock doesn't go around the frame in this picture, but in order to remove the rear wheel from the bike, it has to come through the frame. So by locking through the wheel within that rear triangle and then around a rack or a signpost or a parking meter, you're protecting both the frame and the rear wheel. Now the front wheel can be secured with a cable lock or a chain lock if you're leaving it out overnight. And my pro tip, if you're doing a commute and you go to the same bike rack every single day and you know that it's going to be okay to do this, some places might not want you to leave a lock there. But if you have a bike rack in your company garage or bike room, you can leave a lock there. Just lock it to the rack and you will have your lock there every time you come to your daily rack without having to carry it back and forth. It's a good idea to have a backup, like a small cable lock in your bag or a small chain lock in your bag for, you know, stopping somewhere for an errand on the way home. But it doesn't have to be your, 8 hours in public heavy bike lock. So that's a pro tip for not having to carry your heavy lock everywhere you go. If you're going to the same rack every day for a work commute or an errand that you do every day. Any questions on how I'm showing locking here? Now that cable that I'm showing is sold as a combination, a U-lock plus a cable. That's our most popular lock that we sell at BGI. That cable could be hardened chain. If you've got a high-end front wheel, you may want to upgrade to the hardened chain or a U-lock on that front wheel as well. All right. So if you don't have a bike rack where you're locking, look around for a secure alternative. In this sign, I went to the Bureau of Motor Vehicles last week. They didn't have a bike rack, surprise. So I U-locked my bike to that parking lot sign. I just made sure that it wasn't at a ADA wheelchair ramp. I wasn't blocking the sidewalk, that it is a secure post. The sign at the top of the post means they can't lift my bike off over the top. And my front wheel is actually protected by a security skewer. So that was good enough for me. I'm also going to ask the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, why don't they have a basic bike rack? So the questions, I see a few good ones in the chat. What about keyed thick steel links? Yes, so a hardened steel chain is going to be more secure than a cable lock. That's a good, it can be a hardened steel chain, could be a primary lock or a secondary lock. And then the question was, where do I carry the U-lock? The U-lock that I utilize for my daily commuter is a rather small one. I drop it into my pannier or my backpack or the back of my, in my belt if I'm not carrying any bags. Most U-locks that you get at a shop are going to have a bracket that can be mounted on the bike itself. And we probably on like 80% of the bikes that we sell a U-lock to end up mounting that bracket. If it's a very small bike or compact frame, sometimes it's hard to find a good spot to put the lock. But you can, your bike mechanics have a lot of different creative ways if you want to carry it on the bike. The Momentum City bike that we love at BGI downtown has got a split top tube and the U-lock snaps right into the frame. That's a really convenient place to put the lock. All right. What advice for securing a bike on a car or vehicle? Yes, good question. As mentioned there, some bikes have built-in cable locks. Remember, a cable lock is super easy to snip. If you're able to use a hardened steel chain, lock through your rear wheel through the bike frame and to the rack itself, if it's got a locking point, that's going to be a good option. Another way to disable your bike so it can't roll away even if somebody cuts that cable lock is to put your U-lock through the rear wheel and the frame. Just lock the bike to itself. So they'd have to carry it away. They can't roll it away. So some combination of primary lock, something that's hard to cut, and maybe a secondary lock, which is a cable that's easy to get around things, is a good combination for bike racks on cars. All right. So the item here I'm going to talk about is protecting your saddle and your wheels. I use these Delta locking skewers. So with quick release wheels, they're rather easy to take off, which is great if you're trying to take the wheel off to get it in and out of your vehicle or replace flat tube. But it being easy to take off makes it easy to steal. And rather than carry a secondary lock, I use locking skewers, which replace my quick release skewers. They take another 20 seconds to remove relative to a quick release. But you just carry the little key with a triangle shaped that matches the lock skewer on your keychain, and you've got the special tool to take it off, put it, to loosen it, to remove the wheel and put it back on and tighten it down. There's a couple different brands of these. I know this is the one we carry at BGI downtown, or these Delta skewers. There are also ways to secure your saddle with a cable leash or a locking skewer for your saddle. So I've got a couple photos here showing if you have a fancy saddle or you parked a bike in a high theft location and folks keep pulling seat tubes and saddles, or you've seen other bikes with missing seat posts and saddles, it's a good idea to add a seat post leash. The one on the top left corner is a bicycle chain wrapped in a tube to keep it from chattering. There are coated cables, small chain locks, different ways that you can add a level of security to your saddle and seat post. One of the quickest things we do at BGI a lot is we replace the quick release collar and clamp with a Allen head collar and Allen bolt. And it just takes, rather than seconds, it takes somebody a minute to take off a saddle. So if there's a bike next to yours with a quick release seat post, that one's going to go first. One of my top secret tricks is to fill up the Allen head with candle wax, so that somebody'd have to pick the wax out in order to unbolt my seat post. So it's easy to drip some candle wax into that Allen head screw. And I'm not adjusting it often because I'm the same height every day. Any questions on accessory locking and seat post collars and saddle leashes? Okay. Now, bikes can get pretty wicked expensive now, especially with e-bikes, e-cargo bikes, carbon fiber road bikes, and other specialty bikes. We are starting to see and sell GPS trackers and bicycle alarms as theft deterrents and also theft recovery. So those do exist. Be it a Apple AirTag to a specialized GPS tracker. Some of the Bosch e-bike systems have the ability for a OEM GPS tracker to be installed on the actual electric motor underneath the shielding, so it's not seen by a potential thief, but helps the bike be recovered later. If you do have a bike stolen, the police department's going to ask you for a description and the unique serial number. A photo of your bicycle helps. The serial number is typically tracked by your bike shop when they sell you the bike. I know we do that at BGI for every bike we sell. If you forgot to take a picture of your serial number and save it with your bike in your documents, call up BGI. If you bought it from us, we'll look you up. The other place to report it, aside from the police department, is Bike Index. So bikeindex.org. That's where bike shops check if there are any bikes coming in on trade-in or store credit before they, bring that bike into the shop. They're going to be checking there to see if it's reported stolen. So you can report it stolen there as well. You can also check Bike Index if you're buying a bike from a private seller to make sure that it's not a stolen bicycle that you're getting. If the deal is too good to be true, it is probably a stolen bicycle. All right. Any questions on GPS or reporting stolen bicycles or experience with reporting stolen bicycles? Has anyone had success in Indy with that? All right. Yep. nice. And you can also register your bike as the owner now, without it being stolen. So you don't have to wait until the bike's stolen to register it. That is a national registry.
I would chime in and say it's best to have it all registered so that if it does get stolen, you don't have to try and figure out what the serial number is and all of that, because it would already be registered. And it's easier then to report it stolen if it's already registered.
And speaking of registration, one of the things I did want to bring up was the kryptonite locks, those high security locks, hardened steel chains and U-locks. They have a theft policy. If you register the lock with kryptonite, they also keep track of your ownership of the lock. And if for some reason you lose your keys, they can send you a replacement key as a registered owner of a kryptonite lock. So cutting off a U-lock takes a while. So you don't want to be the person that has to steal your own bike. All right. And if any of this stuff didn't make sense in a presentation, stop by the shop. When you pick up a lock, or ask for advice when you're shopping for locks, or if you need help with learning how to do a quick release, or making sure your brakes are well adjusted, or your shifting is acting funny, that's bring the bike in, chat with folks. They're happy to do a demo. This is where I was going to open it up to questions, or if anybody wanted to chime in before I have a couple announcements at the end. And I'll hand it off to Connie for those.
All right, there's a couple of them. Talk a little bit about personal security while biking, and what locks are on sale. Actually, everything that's not already clearance priced at Bicycle Garage Indy is 15% off, and that would include locks. And answer crime, but also people on cell phones. Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about personal security. One of the best things you can do is ride with other people. So you have a buddy system, or as well as in a place where you personally feel comfortable riding, whether that's in a neighborhood or on a trail, or time of day, that sort of thing. But I personally feel fairly comfortable riding my bike pretty much anywhere and any time, but totally understand there are certain areas, if it's too busy traffic wise, I usually look for alternative routes. If it's an area I'm not super comfortable or don't know anything about, I'll see if other people ride through there on a regular basis, things like that. But I go on a lot of solo bike rides with my camera, so I'm usually stopping and being close, So I'll let Tony.
I was gonna, for people on cell phones, I mean, one of the, if you're riding multi-use trails, or if you're in a downtown area with a lot of folks crossing the street, outside of vehicles with cell phones, having a bell on your bike, a nice loud bell, helps. It's a kind of a cheerful way to tell folks you're nearby and coming up on them. Folks don't get mad at bells, they're just a fun sound. But having a bell mounted on your bike, a nice loud one, is a good way to kind of, increase awareness when you're passing somebody. They don't step in front of you unexpectedly. The one thing I had a friend in Hartford say was she preferred to ride her bike to work than walk, partly because she was moving at a speed that folks that might have hassled her on foot didn't have the time to hassle her when she was biking by. She was, zipping by at, 12, 15 miles an hour instead of ambling by at, 2 to 4 miles per hour. And any of the street harassment she might have experienced at some of the corners on her way to work just didn't happen when she biked. So she felt more comfortable actually biking than walking. Now going into like personal safety is going to be a lot. That's like a second class right there. I can usually do about a 1 hour bicycle safety basics. And then we've got, all the way up to a full day safe cycling course with on-bike experience. So I'm not going to go that deep into bike safety. Kind of hitting our time limit here, and I want to respect folks' day. You might just be on your lunch break. And I'm going to let Connie jump into the announcements here of Future Lunch and Learns and the Expo sale, which came up in the comments already.
Yeah, so we've got every month through October, we have Lunch and Learns, and this lists all the different topics. So next month, Tess Woods from Bike Indianapolis is going to talk about community bike rides and finding other groups to ride with, which is a great way to find out what other areas you might want to explore on your bike, is to join a group ride and find out new locations. Family bike rides is going to be in June. Ross Reinhardt and Sean Hawk are going to be talking about biking with their family. Those are the next couple ones that we've got coming up. Oh, and then I mentioned skipped over April, Spring Revival, getting ready to ride. That's actually personally getting ready to ride. We kind of covered getting your bike ready to ride today, and now it's personally, what do you need to do to get ready to ride? And Roy Sparks is going to do that presentation. And the rest of them are listed. So we're excited about our programs, and hopefully you'll be able to join us on the rest of them as well.
All right.
And then I'll talk a little bit about Expo, if you want to go to the next slide, if you have that or not. Okay. So as was mentioned, our Spring Bicycle Expo starts tomorrow, Friday through Sunday, at all 3 locations, and it's also our downtown grand opening. If you haven't been to our new downtown location on 1411 Roosevelt, if you're one of the first 40 customers at the downtown location only, in celebration of our 40 years in business, if you're one of the first 40, there's a little gift for you. So we hope to see you at any one of our locations, but we also are celebrating our grand opening. It's been open since October, but we haven't had an official grand opening. So we're making that in conjunction with our sale this weekend. So basically everything's on sale. You can go to our website and find out. We've got some special deals going on as well, and lots of bikes available, lots of accessories available. Locks are one of the things that's available. So we look forward to seeing everyone. We haven't done our Spring Expo since 2020. So this will be kind of old and new at the same time. So looking forward to it.
Awesome. And I'll be downtown Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So if you see me, say hello. We'll be crazy busy, but I'll at least come over and chat. Awesome.
The question came up: are bikes for Expo available online? You can look online to see what bikes are going to be available, but you have to basically come into the store in order to purchase them. But you can. But you can look.
For Expo, the stock moves really fast, so it's hard to make sure that we have a bike online that is still on the floor. So if you can get there in person. Friday I'll have the most stock available, and it's folks really turn out for the sale. Cool. I'm so excited to have met everybody. And come say hi in person if you stop at downtown. Sometimes Friday I'm up at North, hiding in the back doing mechanic stuff. So hope to meet folks in person soon. And have some wonderful riding. Thanks, Connie, for facilitating.
You're welcome. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Hope to see you this weekend and keep bicycling.
All right. Any more questions? I just put my email in the chat, and I'll see everybody later.